Hi, welcome back to Hidden Disability Conversation. I'm Christina Irene.
And I'm Wendy Richards. We're going to talk about how to go about receiving accommodations in higher education.
And what's your status today, Wendy?
Definitely a moped, feeling great.
Oh, I love that. That's wonderful.
Thank you. What is your status?
We know from previous episodes that it's been a tough winter for me, but today, and this is actually a good thing, today is a tractor trailer, maybe even pickup truck moments. Yeah.
Okay.
Higher education accommodations. This is a big topic. So
Yes.
definitely going to let you take the lead on this one because that's where you work and that's what you do. I would say the first thing I would be curious about is what kind of accommodations are typically available in higher education?
Right. So that is typically the first question I receive when families and students contact me. They want to know, what are the accommodations that are available? And I always thought to myself, what an odd way to approach that. But that my perspective is, what is your disability and what do you need?
Yeah,
So,
asking like what's available is kind of like, so what groceries do you have in this store? Instead of walking up and saying, do you have hamburger? Like,
right. So, um, and so that's where I usually make the joke to students and I say, well, I don't have a menu to choose from. And they, oh, so what I usually do is I just ask the student, what is their disability?
Mhm.
And what sort of accommodations do you receive now in high school that are really helpful?
Okay.
And that really eases into a great conversation. I always like to start there to see if the student does know and have an awareness about their disability. So that's really helpful. Step number one, be
But
aware
just
of
out
your
of
disability.
curiosity, like what are some examples of accommodations just so we can kind of get a
Oh,
feel,
gotcha. Sure.
like extended time that would be available commonly for
Yep.
testing?
Extended time for exams and quizzes,
Hmm.
separate location, a lot of times distraction-free area.
Yeah.
Tests read, that is a big one.
Mm.
And um, sometimes the ability to use a computer to answer um, essays or have other written work be done on the computer
Okay.
because perhaps the student's handwriting is a part of their disability.
Mhm.
Um, but really the general, very most common ones that we see in higher education are extended time and separate location.
Okay.
So those are our two most common. But we do have a variety of ones that you may not think of. So sometimes students need to take a break.
Mhm.
Sometimes students need to wear a hat or sunglasses. Sometimes students need the lights dimmed if it's at all possible. And many
Sure.
of our faculty are really good with that. Um,
So, like, modifications often that a student may bring along as well, such as
mhm.
you said, sunglasses or hat,
Yeah.
or mobility aid, or a
Yes.
service animal.
Yes. Yep.
Do you
Or
work with housing? And sorry, I'm
absolutely, absolutely. I was going to say too, assistive technology is a huge accommodation. Note-taking, assistive technology has come a long way. There are wonderful aspects of that, and maybe that can be another topic of conversation that we have is assistive technology. I can provide housing accommodations, basically anything that creates access to the curriculum or our campus, I'm in charge of.
I
So
like the
that's
word
what I do.
access.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
thank you.
access. This is not about like doing something special, or this is not about
No,
a disability. This is about access. This is about
right.
getting the thing that everybody else gets too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like the way you put it. So, really, the housekeeping part of it is look on your college's website, your prospective college that you'd like to attend, and make sure you're in the know. Know what documentation they need. Typically, colleges work in the medical model, but many colleges are working towards the social model. So we at the college I work at, we do use the medical model. So I do require documentation that is current within the last 3 years or so. So a typical thing would be a current psychological, or any medical documentation if you have a medical disability.
So when you talk
Um,
about medical model and documentation, you mean you require something from an actual medical or mental health professional.
Correct. Yep, that's absolutely it. And the social model being we have the person come in, we do more talking, listening, responding to what the student has to say, and we gather information in that way. Typically, a social model doesn't require an outside provider or medical documentation.
I know that for example, our parking placards that we use, we never
Yes,
have to tell anybody what our disability is. We only need to
correct.
tell what our need is. And
Correct. And I'm
that's
glad you're bringing that up
yeah.
because I definitely want anyone listening, students or families, to know that any information they provide to me is confidential and I can determine their accommodations. And that is the only thing that faculty will see. Faculty will read the accommodation letter that I've put together and they will do what is stated on that letter. So they don't need to know the person's diagnosis, whether it be a medical diagnosis, mental health, learning disability, they wouldn't have any idea. Self-disclosure is the first step a student should take. So they should self-disclose to their accessibility or disability office in college. That is the absolute first step, and then we can help a student from there. So many times I see students come from high school into higher ed. They want to leave it all behind, and it's definitely not the time to leave accommodations behind. College is exponentially more difficult, and you should be using everything and every resource that you have in order to get access. So I like how you picked up on the word access. So we create access to the curriculum. We do not accommodate for success. Accommodating for success is K through 12. Accommodating for access is higher ed, is a good way of thinking of it.
So a couple things you said. One is that the student has to self-disclose. That's not just step one, that's necessary. Like it is step
Yes,
one and it's necessary. Nobody is going to tap a student on the shoulder at a college or university and say, I think you need an accommodation, let me help you.
right,
It is
right.
entirely up to them to do.
Yes, yeah,
And the other thing I was actually just thinking is that, as far as that barrier and wanting to do it without the accommodation and that desire, if it's there, and there's so many reasons why that could be, but regardless of the reason, it doesn't hurt to have it available. Like it's like taking an umbrella if it's going to rain. Maybe you don't use it. It's like our parking placard. Even
right,
one of us, we don't use it every time we go, but it's nice
right,
knowing it's there just in case. So
right.
they can disclose a need, they can get their access, and then they can choose if they want to use it or not.
And that is exactly what I tell students. They do not have to use their accommodations for every class, for every test. They can choose to use it when they want to. And I think it's the first step of good advocating and empowerment for students. I know most students don't even think about it that way. They think, well, I have accommodations, I have to use it for every class, every test. And then once they start feeling comfortable with it, we do have some students that say, no, I actually don't think I need it for this quiz or this exam, but I'll use it for my midterm or my final. And it's really kind of cool to watch that growth and that self-confidence.
That also works also with the like the splat and that varying disability and like if I'm having a moped day, I'm not going to use the accommodations, but if I'm having a freight train day and I'm going to still be able to take this quiz because I can you have access to these accommodations.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that. I do have students that they'll have extended time for an exam, which typically is, say a class is 50 minutes, we'll round it hour and a half, give them for an exam, and they're done in an hour. You don't always have to use all of your time. And educating a student about that, just knowing it's there sometimes is all it takes to, just make that situation more tolerable and decrease their anxiety.
So a question that I get asked a lot when I do programs for faculty and staff is what can faculty and staff do if they notice a student has a disability or needs something for accessibility or would benefit from something with accessibility, yet they, they know that they can't do that. They can't speak for them. They can't approach them about
Right,
that because
right,
it's not like K through 12. Now,
right,
one thing that I like to recommend is like at the beginning, very beginning of the semester, let everybody in your class know, like these are the things that are available for
right.
services. Just kind of do like a mini orientation. And then at any time, you can remind the class, just so you know, these are accommodations that are available. And if you
Yep,
tell everyone in the room, you're not
right.
singling anybody out. And that's some good diligence. How do you feel about that?
Well, I feel great about it, and I think that's a great way of handling it. So much so that every one of our faculty members has my information and our department's information in their syllabus. So when they go over the
Perfect.
syllabus, it is just a natural thing to bring up if you had an IEP or a 504 in high school and you had accommodations, please go see me, at the college. So that's kind of the first time they hear it. I work in a small college, and our faculty are fabulous in the sense that if they see someone struggling, they don't necessarily need to say, I wonder if that's a learning disability. I wonder if that student has a disability. Sometimes they just can say to them, you know what, I see that you're struggling. Maybe go to case where my office is located.
Mhm.
And then from there, I can kind of search it out. Either they are a student with a disability that could benefit from accommodations, or they're just a student that needs some tutoring, and that's available there as well. So it's nice for them to touch base with me, just for me to either rule in or rule out that they are a student with a disability and require accommodations.
So that's good advice. So that something like that is not really overstepping because it's
No,
like a whole building that has stuff that can help, and
right.
acknowledging that somebody is struggling is really just being a good citizen.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's really good. It's a great way. Um, we're trying to implement new ways of capturing those students that maybe haven't disclosed. And, we always hope to help as many students as possible. We do have students that self-disclose but never um, go through the process of receiving academic accommodations, and they do just fine. So there's examples of the spectrum of students that we work with. Some students don't need their accommodations in college, and some students do. So it's really nice to see, the whole process. But the one thing that I do want to say for families is, and this comes from high school, my child has an IEP, and I'm going to send it to you. And that's great, and it's great information, and I do read it, but that's not documentation of disability. So an IEP is a high school document that technically expires when the student graduates.
Mhm.
It's helpful information. It gives a perspective of the teachers about strengths and weaknesses, but documentation of disability is really the psychological. So that is the document that I need, um, along with the IEP, but I can't accept the IEP on its own. So that's just one thing I want to stress because I'm forever hearing, just send the IEP. No, we need a little bit more than that. So that's kind of my last plug about documentation. And then, we determine the accommodations, we write up the letter, and it's the student's responsibility. That's probably the other thing I want to emphasize, to make sure that their faculty have the letter. Some colleges mail them out or email them, of course, email them out to the faculty for the student. But I like to teach independence, because once a student goes to the workplace, there's not going to be somebody holding their hand through everything typically. So the student sends
So
it out.
the student has to let faculty and faculty know that they,
Right.
okay, I didn't know that. You got me
Yes.
there. I didn't know that. I was a teacher in K through 12. Well, side note, if your child is still in K through 12,
Yeah.
maybe check in and double check that their teachers are actually aware of the IEP because I didn't know.
Yeah, and attend those IEP meetings those yearly meetings and have input. Don't let something go by that you don't understand. Ask questions.
I think back, I'm like, what should I have done as a teacher? But I had well over 100 students. I had overcrowded
Wow.
classrooms. I can't go and dig through filing cabinets and look up
Oh my gosh.
and find every student in there. What kind of guidelines do you have to follow as far as communicating with parents? Is it like HIPAA where like the student has to give official written approval for you to discuss, their anything with parents? I would assume so if somebody's in college, like even their grades and that's all private information, correct?
Right. Absolutely private information. So just as HIPAA is confidentiality for medical, FERPA is the confidentiality for college. So FERPA is the law that we follow, the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act. So
FERPA.
RPA. Yep. I always tell parents is you and I are on the same page. We both want the best for your son or daughter. It's really the student that I'd like to get on board and talk with. So I don't mind if families are there in the background. But what isn't helpful is that when a parent sort of kind of takes over and the
Mhm.
student sits back, the student really needs to have skin in the game. They've really got to be able to articulate their needs. And while I do understand, and other disability offices understand that it's the first time and it's an educational moment, we can help coach you through all of that. We can help talk. It's a safe place to explore and to practice that conversation. So I definitely would recommend to any junior or senior that has an IEP or a 504 looking for college accommodations, practice being comfortable saying what your disability is. Practice talking about it. Feel okay about it. There's should be no stigma about it, and that's why we're here. That's why we're talking about this, and really be an advocate and understand what you need to create access and find that college that's the right one for you.
Yeah, do you ever meet with students who are just, touring a college, visiting a college, considering a college? You meet with
Absolutely.
students and so they can get a feel. So that would be a great way for a student to self-advocate is to make sure they locate who's in charge of
Right.
accessibility services, disability services. And at every college university, it is a different name.
It
There's
is.
Office of Student Access, Accessibility
Yes.
Services, Disability Services. There's
Right. Right.
what are some other ones? There's just like the Learning Center or not just Learning Center, but like I can't think of
Yeah,
it off the top of
yeah.
my head, but there's some
Student
that don't even
accessibility services, disability student supports.
student
Um,
support
I
services.
think
Yeah.
if you look up student supports, you're probably in the right area. And then you can find your way from there. But you're right, then even the names are different. So when you're talking with admissions and you're making those appointments for a tour, just let them know, I'd like to speak with somebody about accommodations, and they'll point you in the right direction.
And part of your job is to not just make sure a student has access and accommodations, but also to help them be prepared to enter the workforce.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
while you're not an HR expert and you
Nope.
can't teach them all of the nuances about HR and law and their rights in the workplace and all of that, you can help them be more confident and be more ready to disclose and be
Right,
empowered and be
right.
ready to be their best as they enter the workforce.
Yeah. Yep. That is the goal.
So next time, once again, we don't know yet. We'll find out when we get there. But thank you so much for watching Hidden Disability Conversation, and we will see you soon.
Please like and subscribe. Have a great day. Bye.
Thanks, bye.